I'm Mike, and yes, this background looks fake, but it's actually real. But today it's veganic farming, which is organic farming that is also vegan. How can agriculture be vegan, you ask? Well, by simply not exploiting animals in the growing process. So we're gonna look more at that and also bust some of the myths surrounding veganic agriculture. Let's start with the main difference between veganic agriculture and normal organic agriculture, and that is fertilizer. In order to be certified organic, you have to ditch a lot of these synthetic fertilizers and find a replacement, and that is why many of your veggies and fruits were probably covered in blood, bone, and ground up fish bodies, and also poop. Okay, to be fair, we can call it manure, but the idea behind veganic agriculture is to not use any of those animal products, including manure, because by buying it or taking it from a factory farm or other farm, you are supporting the animal industry, which is full of exploited animals. And the last thing vegans want to do is support the animal farming industry. But the rejection of all these fertilizers gives rise to the concern that veganic agriculture is not scalable because you can't get enough nitrogen, which is a principal ingredient in fertilizer, over such a large field. Like the myth of how you can't get enough protein on a vegan diet, which also happens to be made of nitrogen, this is wrong. Because all the nitrogen that animals get comes from plants. There are plants called nitrogen-fixing plants that take nitrogen from the atmosphere by using a symbiotic relationship with a certain bacteria that sort of infects the site and then tricks the plant into feeding it energy so that it can perform this expensive task of taking nitrogen from the air and making it bioavailable to the plant. Clover is one example of a nitrogen-fixing plant, and here is a farmer who has a 3,400-acre veganic farm explaining how they use nitrogen fixers on their farm.
In the spring, when we seed our millet, we also seed a plant called sweet blossom yellow clover. It's a legume, and the advantage to this for us is that not only does it have a nice big taproot and it breaks up the soil and makes a nice fluffy good seed bed, but it also creates little nodules on it, which will look like a little BB on the roots. And these are full of all types of good things, nitrogen in particular. And when we plow that under and start summer fallow for that year, we'll be putting all that back into the soil.
And from another large-scale veganic grower that grows a ton of different crops.
Well, we've been growing flax, peas, lentils, wheat, oats, durum, barley. We'll throw clover in with the wheat when we seed it, and then when it comes up in the spring, then we let it grow up so high and then we plow it down, and then that plows the green manure into the land.
So instead of letting cows and other animals eat clover and other nitrogen-rich foods, and then taking that poop, shipping it, and spreading it around using fossil fuels, you can just plant nitrogen-fixing crops in with your main crop, after your main crop, or rotate crops with those nitrogen-fixing foods, which includes a ton of plants like soybeans and other legumes like lentils and peas, and the list goes on. These ideas are nothing new. They were documented in ancient Indian texts, Chinese texts, and Greek texts, and they're pretty much ubiquitous. I mean, look at the 3 sisters that the Native Americans planted. Corn, beans for nitrogen, and squash. And another way to fertilize without manure is green composting that just uses nitrogen-fixing plants in place of manure. There's Singing Frogs Farm in Sebastopol, California, which boasts $100,000 of income per acre, and they use their own green vegetable waste to compost instead of adding manure. But aren't animals running around and pooping everywhere required to have a sustainable system and trap carbon? That's what Alan Savory says. Well, according to them, and this is also from Not Tilling, quote, "We've quadrupled our soil organic matter without nutrient leaching, while nearly tripling the total microbial life in our soils." They also use about 1/10 of the amount of water as surrounding farms in California, which is ridiculous. But critics of veganic farming go beyond fertilizer with things like, no system can be truly vegan because small rodents and other small animals will die in the harvesting of food. Well, measures absolutely must be taken to minimize these deaths as much as possible. These are unintentional deaths, unlike the intentional deaths of eating animals directly. And as this chart shows, more animals are killed from harvesting when you eat animal products than they are when you eat plants directly, and this is because you are taking into account all of the plants that an animal ate over its entire lifetime. Okay, so you're trying to really not kill animals in a veganic system, then how do you deal with pests? There are many creative solutions, the first of which is just encouraging biodiversity. For example, if you have an insect problem, then you can encourage certain species of predator insects or birds, for example, to take control of the situation. Pests can also be fought off by boosting the immune system of the plant by using things like microbial sprays, which are essentially probiotics for plants. And there are also some very creative solutions like making cabbage moth decoys and placing them in plants, and then they prevent the real cabbage moths from laying in that area, which is pretty cool. Another cool area of veganic agriculture is vegan permaculture or vegan culture, or there are a lot of names for it, but it's essentially using the principles of permaculture, like mimicking nature and restoring biodiversity like I just talked about, and applying it to a vegan system and not using manure. This idea of working with the land is really important because, as you may know, you can get away with a lot of bad stuff and still be certified organic through loopholes and things like that. But there are many people out there that are already farming this way, including Woodleaf Farm, which produces 200 varieties of peaches, apples, pears, and cherries, as well as several vegetables, and has not used manure for over 20 years. There are also people like Ian Tulhertz who have implemented regenerative veganic practices around the world. But none of this really matters if veganic agriculture isn't profitable. So is it? Well, 1 Degree, a brand that you may recognize from stores, has a network of veganic growers, some of which you saw earlier. Many of these are long-standing farms that have chosen to adopt this veganic method, so clearly it is working, and if you doubt it, well, these farms are everywhere, so you can go and ask them yourself. In the end, veganic agriculture is the future of farming if our future does not involve exploiting animals. And there really is no magic ingredient in animal manure that does not come from plants that we cannot use by creating green fertilizer, green compost, using crop rotation and cover cropping methods. So there's really no excuse. The takeaway from this video is that animal nutrients originally come from plants, so just like how you can get all the nutrients you need on a vegan diet without eating animal products, your plants also do not need to consume animal products. And that way we can grow all of our food without exploiting animals and supporting those industries. So you should support veganic agriculture if you have a chance, and if you are a grower, you should go veganic! Alright, thank you for watching.